Welcome back to the Uplevel Dairy Podcast. And this month we are celebrating International Women's Day on March 8th and Women's History Month. And to do so, I am bringing you guests from around the world who are impacting and leading the dairy industry. And my guest today originally comes from Brazil, but has made her way throughout the United States and around the world. Fernanda Lopes. As the Global Ruminant Strategy Manager with Adisseo, you'll get to hear Fernanda's story of how she first discovered her love for the dairy industry in a surprising way at the age of 12, how it led her to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and now pushes her as a leader in a global company and impacting others along the way. It's my honor and privilege to introduce you today to Fernanda Lopes. This episode is sponsored by Uplevel Dairy Podcast founding partner Adisseo, a global leader in nutrition solutions and premier provider of rumen-protected methionine for dairy producers who want to optimize milk production, capture more value from components, and maintain the health of their high-performing herds. Feed is the greatest expense on any dairy operation, and don't you want to know how an adjustment to the ration will affect your bottom line? Adisseo empowers nutritionists to make informed ration balancing decisions with MilkPay.com. Customizable to your dairy's own data, this profitability calculator puts the power of real-time milk market information in the palm of your hand. Find out how much your latest ration change is really costing you with the free MilkPay app available on iOS and through MilkPay.com. Fernanda, to get started here, just take a minute and introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, and what your role is these days with Adisseo.
So I'm Fernanda Lopes. I am from Brazil. I have been with Adisseo for almost 10 years now. We start with technical support, jump to different positions on management of products, and today I'm like in the global team as a strategic manager, more involved on the business between all the regions on the ruminant business.
So between your Brazilian background and now your global perspective on the ruminant business, you represent international women in the dairy business. And what was your educational background?
So I did my undergrad in Brazil on like animal science. So that's where I start to be more involved with dairy. And then after I had the opportunity to come to Wisconsin to do my internship. And then after my internship, I stayed for my master and my PhD. Yeah, I got my master and my PhD at UW-Madison that I'm very proud of. Go Badgers. Yeah, that's a little bit about my background on my education.
So was your first real introduction into dairy through school and then through your research?
Not really. Like I grew up in the farm, but was not a dairy farm. Was a vegetable farm.
Uh-huh.
But I think most of the time my dad was working with a lot of tomatoes and yucca. Maybe you don't know what is yucca.
I do not know what a yucca is. What is a yucca? I know a tomato, but
Is the family kind of like the family of potatoes, but is used a lot of like in the South America to do some flowers too, like for cakes and stuff and cheese bread. If you haven't tried the cheese bread from Brazil, from my state, Minas Gerais is the best one, but it's come from the yucca. So the mainly business of my dad was tomato and yucca, but my grandma had some dairy, like in that time, 80 cows. That was a big dairy in that time. And some of my cousins also work with dairy. But you say the time I really decide to work and fell in love with dairy cows was on Saturdays. I was maybe between 11, 12. I take my horse and go for a ride. And I go in one of my neighbors that has the farm close to my dad, and he is a vet, and he was one of the first veterinarian that brought the transfer that started to do the embryo transfer in Brazil. So on Saturdays, I take my horse, I go there to help him, like to hold the cows, to just all the work, like handle the cows for he to do all the flushing and all that. And one day he told me, "Do you want to do the palpation to feel the calf inside the cow?" I think that I was 12 years old, and then when I felt the calf, that was a game changer for me. I feel, well, now I need to start to work with this animal too because it's just amazing. I think that was the big when changed my view about dairy. But in that time, I want to be like a veterinarian, okay? Because I was in love with the reproduction. Almost every weekend, I went there to work with him to help him. So when the time arrived to apply for the universities in Brazil, I started to look all the other courses also. And I start to read about animal science. In Brazil, we call zootecnia. That is really talking more about the production. And there was the vet side. I love the reproduction, but I didn't like all the disease, the treatments, all the other stuff. So, and then I start to look more about the animal side, and I fell in love what was the promise, right? To the nutrition, to take care of the animals and all that. So that's where everything starts. And then I apply for animal science, and then I start the University on Animal Science.
Oh, that is such a cool story, Fernanda, of that moment that you can look back on as a 12-year-old, right?
Yes.
And getting to, for one, watch that embryo work with the vet and then getting to actually do a palpation yourself. And look where that one moment led you. It led you to go on and pursue, and not just an education, but an advanced degree and a career in the dairy industry that has continued to take you around the world. And so, is where you are now, Fernanda, is this where you always saw yourself being?
It is. It is. I like challenge. That's maybe something on my personality. I like challenging, and everybody say maybe you cannot do that. Maybe that's where I go to try to do. So I think maybe something connect to my personality and maybe the way I grew up too. Seeing my family, my dad, my mama, always work very hard to achieve stuff. So maybe something that's come from
Well, and when you think about the people that have influenced you along the way, you mentioned your parents, you talked about the neighbor who was the ET vet. Anybody else that really stands out as a strong mentor for you that really laid a path or taught you some valuable lessons along the way?
I think for my professional life, I had Dr. Marcos Neves in Brazil. When I started my university at the University of Lavras, we have like we call the Grupo do Leite, that is in translation be milk group. That were the group that studied nutrition, that we help small farms. We did all the trials. That's where I started to be involved a lot with the research too. And Marcos was very restrict and very, how you say, you need to deliver the best. And I think that is where I really start to challenge myself that we can deliver more, we can deliver more. And I think the other one will be Dr. Combs, Dave Combs at the UW. Dave was like, for me, is like I say that he was my angel because he taught me a lot during my master, my PhD, but I think the most important, he taught me to believe on myself.
So he really taught you to believe in yourself. And Fernanda, I'll be honest, like my interactions with you, I would never have seen you as a person that had any doubt in yourself. You are so bold, so strong, so admirable for those qualities. Was there a time in life when it wasn't like that?
Well, I think when I came here, the challenge with the language, also, well, different place, different people. I was very good on delivery, the work, the result, the trial, the samples, everything. Of course, the English was challenge to get high score. You need to get A, B, and everything to pass and everything. And a lot of time I question myself. I am worth to be here to meet all these people, right?
Fernanda, clearly Dr. Combs made a really big impact by being a person in your life at a time where you had some self-doubt, which so many people face. And it's not just women, it's everybody has those moments where you doubt yourself a little bit. How did he help you through that? Is there something that really stands out?
Yeah, I remember one day that like we were discussing about one of my bad grade, and I said, "I Dave, maybe I'm not worth to be here because all the people like AA, and I think I had got BC or something like that." And he said, "You are not every people. You are not everyone. Look how much thing you achieve, how much thing you deliver every day. It's not one grade that define anyone, that would define one person." So yeah, and then like all the talks, sometime in the end of the day, I'm running my samples, doing my in vitro, and he's in his office all the time with their door open for very welcome to come and talk. So that just to have be he there to talk and listen my challenge and understand and help me to go through. Okay, if you are not good in English on that, maybe with this what we need to work for you to improve, right? Maybe you are not the best in this, let's say, grade for, I don't know, physics or whatever, but you are better in this one. Everybody has this challenge and difference, and that is, I think, he taught me. You are not everyone. You are you, and there is the good stuff that you deliver every single day. So, yeah, that was David.
And sometimes we need to have those people in our life that point that out. And when you're a person who's driven to do well, right? And has that desire to be at the top, be at the best. And let's face it, if that wasn't, you wouldn't have left Brazil and gotten yourself to Madison and pursued your education there. So that's part of your core, right? And sometimes we need those people in our life that can speak life into us. They bring some wisdom, they bring a perspective and bring us back down to reality, and the reality that sometimes we forget to live in when we're so focused on achievement or advancement. What a gift he was to you as a young student. And that sounds like something that's really stuck with you, huh?
Yes, that's why I say Dave was my angel to make me see how much good I was and I am, like just say, okay, stop to compare with everybody else. And I think it's the challenge today, right? When you look out the medias and everybody's very knowledge, everybody is doing everything, all the life is great, and you try to compare with the median, and I think that can be a challenge even for young people, well, more for young people that is starting, right? They want to compare themselves with everybody else, and most of the time with people that is are very high in the career, right? So
Oh, for sure. And you talk about the challenges that young people face today. You talk about challenges that you faced as a student when you were in that seat yourself. But I'm curious for you, if you were to look back on the last 5 years as a professional in the dairy industry, what would you say has been one of the biggest challenges that you've personally ran into?
3 years ago when I came back to US, because I started to work with Adisseo in Brazil. I was developing the business there, start to get my things, I say, moving around there. Thing was doing great, and then I came here for a new challenge, and then I need to adapt again to the culture, to see that the way I did the management there maybe was not the same way I would do here. And then this had taught me a lot how you need to understand the culture and to put yourself like in the culture that you live and understand that. Not that you need to change who you are, but you need to be adapted.
And when you say culture, are you speaking more like corporate culture or American culture? What does that mean for you?
I think the American culture, because there is the Adisseo culture, of course, every region will be different because it's driven by the culture of that country, that people. In Brazil, people are much more, how to say, talkative and all that. So that is different from here, right? You never go and hug the first time, let's say that, for example. And even the way you talk about to give like feedback is different the way you do in South America and the way you do here. So I think that is one of the challenge for me is like to adapt to the culture and position yourself in a good way, but inside of culture.
You mentioned the way you give feedback is something that you noticed was different. What does giving feedback look like here in America? And what did giving feedback look like? How was it different in Brazil?
That's interesting because when I came back for my PhD back to Brazil, everybody said that I was very direct forward, right? That I think is one unique thing about the US, for example, American culture. It's more direct, and in South America, we tend to need to talk a little more before you go and say direct what your feedback. And we tend to highlight, I think in South America, the bad points and then go to the good ones. Maybe here in the US is different. You go for the good ones and maybe highlight the bad ones. I don't know. Maybe this part was not good.
Also, these cultural differences in, I'll call it kind of like cultural communications, is something that really came up as different. And I had to hand it to you because you've gone back and forth from Brazil to Wisconsin to Brazil back to US, and not to mention you travel a lot in between. So you have to be really flexible and adaptable to so many cultures. And you work for a global company. And so it has, does that bring out other challenges too? Like not just the US and Brazilian cultural differences in communication, but how have you learned to communicate effectively with other cultures too?
Oh, it's a learning process every single day, and it's one topic that's amazing me, and I'm start to study more and more. There is a book called Culture Map. I can share with you, and you leave the link for who want to know more because you start to understand the way you read the email from someone that come from email that's come from Japan, or the way that come from France, and then you, or during the calls, why these people are not question a lot of questions, they are not asking a lot of questions, why they don't say anything, or why someone like the French speak a lot, sometimes more than even the South American people. And you start to understand this difference, right? Why US is really driven about the result and the technical part come later. You show the result first, and then after you explain how to get there. Most of you go to European places, you need to explain all the technical part first and how to go in the results. So is different. It's like very interesting why for Japanese people sometimes you need to ask the same question 3 times for them be more comfortable to answer. So it's a very interesting topic. Yes.
Wow, that's very interesting. And I also really appreciate that you offer a tool that's been helpful for you in understanding how to really embrace and navigate through these intercultural communications. So,
I think is one thing that I learned also. Of course, we're getting old and the years in the road, we are learning and say sometime when before, like maybe in my 20 years, 30 years, you will think, okay, I'm bad on that and I'm bad. I'm not going to do it. That is different when you look where you are bad and say, okay, this is where I need to work. Because for us, we tend to be comfortable and just work with what we like. So that's where we can, of course, deliver more in that side. I have been challenged a lot in this new position because first my education was the technical background, and then I went to as a product manager, and then I start to sell, and I love sell. And to be honest, today is something that like really make my, how to say, my blood warm, and like when we go talk about sales. And for me that's because it's connect to people also. I'm a very people person. I like to talk, and you can see I like to talk, I like to be with people. But then you need to start to understand like, okay, where do you need to work to improve What you always told you that you were bad. And I told you the culture was my problem. And that's why I'm trying to work on that now.
You're consciously cultivating ways to improve that area and you're doing it. So, but I want to make sure that we're also taking a moment to recognize the wins along the way. And when you look back on, again, say the last 5 years, aside from the challenges, can you name something or identify something that's brought you the greatest satisfaction, the greatest joy? Like, what's a win that we can celebrate together from your last 5 years?
The last 5 years, there is a lot of when I think I'm very grateful because I think I'm very blessed. I have the 5 years, I think, of course, the global position for me was one thing that I was really looking and dreaming for. I think this is one of the great achievement. Also, my first apartment that I bought, my first apartment, that was a good one too. Have opportunity now to, let's say, when I start to build a team, like the sales team in Brazil, that when I look back and say, wow, when I start that from nothing, like I was the only one on the ruminant team, and then when I left was already 5 people there. So
You painted a little bit of a picture of one of those highlights, one of the many, but it was growing that team in Brazil from being just you to being 5 people when you left. And that's exciting. That's growth. That's advancement. That's building something from nothing. And when you look at the many different things that have fallen on your plate and under your responsibility, as you talked about before, you've done a lot of the technical work, right? The technical side and the research behind that, and then developing a team. And now you're in a sales side of things. I think there's a lot to be learned and gleaned, especially for younger professionals at your path and how it unfolded to where you are now in sales. And so like you mentioned, you really love this. Do you think you are in your sweet spot in sales compared to research, technical, growing the team?
I think because sales is the base of everything in the company, right? If the company doesn't sell, the company doesn't exist. And I think even for us, we need to sell ourselves every single day, right? So, and then one thing that I learned was that you need to connect the dots, right? To build a good team, that you are selling the leadership to build a good team. Like and one thing that I think for what we work in Adisseo that I think help a lot in this transition between to be a technical and be able to sell because our product is very technical, right? I selling something that I believe. So, and that will also that I want to see the result that the farm will gain more with that. I think for me, that one of the priority. When I talk about I'm selling something, I think the first question, how much more the farmer will get with that. And I think go back from when I grow up, because my dad and my mom was every Saturday morning in the farmer's market selling vegetables. I grew up doing that. And I think today, when I look back, okay, maybe I was loving with sales since I was 3, 4 years old.
It wasn't the tomatoes, it wasn't the yucca, but there was the sales piece that you have continued on in your roles from your family.
Yes, yes.
So we're going to fast forward 5 years. We've been looking back, but I want to take a minute to look ahead. So 5 years from now, Fernanda, how do you hope to answer that previous question of what brings you the most satisfaction?
I would love to be help more training people on sales. Sales connect with behavior, with neuroscience, all that is something that I really love.
So really tying together the understanding for the technical side, but then what you innately know about people and what you've pushed yourself to learn to be able to
Yes.
communicate with people, especially as we talked about before, cross-cultural communication. So exciting opportunities ahead for you, but also for the people that will be in a spot where they get to learn from you too, Fernanda, because you're passionate about these things. And the most passionate people and the ones that have taught themselves are the best teachers for the rest of us. And I want you to speak to the other young women out there, literally around the world, that are going to be listening to what you've been sharing today. And there's a lot of women within Adisseo also that I know I've had the privilege of meeting, just really cool people. Speak to them, speak to the others that are up and coming, looking at the path that you're on and saying, "Ooh, someday I want to be doing what Fernanda's doing." What's the best wisdom that you can share back to them today?
I think is believe on themselves. I think that is the first one. Like, don't be afraid to want more and take space and grow on your career. I think that is the thing that after you start to believe on yourself, you go for more and you don't be afraid to maybe speak up sometime and show that you can do it. One thing that I start to do, like that helped me a lot, is really to write down what I can do, what I'm good with, what I'm not good. Really helps when you start to put in the paper everything that you can do or you have done. You start, okay, no, I'm not that bad. I really can do this. So, and really push yourself. Like, sometime, of course, I'm afraid to do a lot of stuff. Like, my first talk in public was not easy, but go and do it. Study, prepare, be prepared, and go and do it. But the other thing is be prepared, learn, be prepared, and go and do it. People say if you are scared, go anyway. No, I think you need to. Some scare is good. That like a butterfly, I think is good. But prepare yourself and go and do it and fix because you'll be not perfect. That is another thing. I'm not perfect in anything that I do. I think I go and do it, and after I come back and fix. Because one thing that I think a lot of time hold us is to try to be the perfection, to achieve the perfection. So just believe on self, go and do it, and prepare yourself. I think you need to be happy in the process, in the journey. Because if you are not happy, nothing makes sense. Doesn't make sense. So, and you'll not be happy most all day, every day. But if you what you're doing, give you some 5 minutes of happiness on during the day, maybe you are in the wrong path. I think one thing that I learned that you need to be happy in the process.
Was there a time when you were on a path and you realized you weren't happy on that path?
I was thinking about that maybe last week. I think I never was unhappy on my path. Maybe I was unhappy one day or maybe some hours in that day, but I'm a happy person. So, and I love what I do, so yeah. Yeah.
Well, and when you think about what you love, and this is what I'm gleaning from you today, Fernanda, your love, as much as it's been expressed through your work, it's for personally challenging yourself. It's for continuous learning, continuous growth. And that has taken its shape in different forms. The industry itself has allowed you to express it, but through research, through technical work, through development, now through sales. And each of those things, you're happy because they're meeting your core desires, your core motivations to keep learning, to keep growing, and to give you an opportunity to challenge yourself. And back to what you talked about with how you perform at your best, well, with measurable results, with those opportunities to be that. Am I reading you right today?
Yep, you are. You are.
So, Fernanda, I have asked you to leave a couple questions for our next guest. But before we get to that, I have questions from my first interview in this International Women in Dairy series. And so the woman that I interviewed for that episode is Fernanda Lopes Avelo. So she is a Puerto Rican dairy farmer. She's also a lawyer, and she recently just became a mom as well. But amazing. You and her would love each other. You're just incredible, incredible women that are doing great things in dairy. And she said, I'm going to be ambitious. I'm going to leave 2 questions for the next guest. So I did not tell you what these were, but her question number 1 was this. She said, I would really like to know what keeps you going when you're wearing thin. What keeps you getting out of bed in the morning? So I think I'm going to rephrase this with the term burnout, because that is something that I hit that wall sometimes. So many other women that do as well. So how do you avoid that?
I think one thing that I'm trying to be more and avoid, because we can work easily 16, 17 hours per day in the front of the computer. Like a lot of the time, one thing that I learned like in the hard way, I wake up early every day, 4:35. It's just I wake up and then I was okay, let me drink my coffee and look some emails before I go to the gym. When I see it's already 10 p.m. and I didn't went to the gym. One thing I decide, okay, I will not open my email, my Instagram, anything before I go in the gym in the morning, because it's not just about like to keep your shape and healthy. It's the mental also. I think for me is one thing, because yeah, if I open my computer in the morning, I just stay all day until whatever what time. So you need to find this escape. What make you to energize your brain? Then you can go for 16, 17 hours. But for me, is this what make me not go crazy sometimes is just to have this time for me to take care of myself.
That was a really valuable
Yeah.
little golden nugget there. Like, I feel like my computer, my inbox is Pandora's box. And once you open it, you're not getting out of there anytime soon. So, but this is self discipline too on your part. And this is where being driven and dedicated has what I would call the point of diminishing return, because you're so dedicated and driven that it's easy to open up your email and get lost in it for the rest of the day. And so it takes that self-discipline to say, I know I need to set this kind of little habit, rule, whatever you want to call it, for yourself. And everybody else benefits from it too, don't they?
Yeah, of course. And I think that is my challenge. I'm not organized at all. That is, I think, is my big challenge. I try to do everything the same time, and that is, and it's hard. If I need to, I really try to do the list every day what I need to do. But of course, I have hard time to follow that.
So, and one last question that Crucia had. So she's a dairy farmer in Puerto Rico, right? So like you talk sustainability, it's got a whole different definition. She says, what's one thing you feel could be done to guarantee the continuity of the dairy industry?
The first thing, the farmer needs to be efficient on that, right? Because everybody talk about sustainability without really look everything else that the farmer, the producer are doing, right? I think the first we need to start how to help them be more efficient, and then no need to be like methane or all this, like how to have a better nutrition, how to have a better management of the transition cows, on the management of the farm. I think a lot of the time, if you can fix the management of the farm, if you can fix the nutrition, is already the farm is more sustainable because financial, right? So I think for me, we start with still going the basic, have a very well managed farm on the management and the nutrition. Then the farm will be able to be more sustainable and apply everything else that will come with the sustainability approach on the carbon credit and everything on that.
So stick with the basics, focus on the basics first.
But that doesn't mean that you need to be efficient the way you're doing, right? The base doesn't mean that you don't need to deliver the best nutrition to the cows, the best management. Maybe you need to invest in management instead of invest or some green carbon or whatever. So I think that is kind of my message.
And that's a good one. Do the best at the basics first. Is that a good way to summarize that? Do the best at the basics first. All right. So, what's your question you'd like to leave for the next woman in the International Women in Dairy series?
The question I ask a lot of myself is how can we, you do a great job on that. How can we promote more the dairy life to people that are not involved on our field and understand a lot of time the way we treat the cows, what is about the dairy life. How can we do this more in a more efficient way? How can we involve our young generation to maybe spoke more about the dairy for the general public? Because I think this new generation, they want to see, they want to prove, and they want to be direct to the point also. So how can we bring more the young generation to the dairy community? Young women, girls, to help us to spread more what is the reality in the dairy world.
So, how do we get more young people, specifically young women, to share the story and to communicate in the way that their peers want to be communicated with? Like you said, they want to see, they need it to be direct. It's like TikTok communication style, right? They used to say 7 seconds. It's 3 seconds.
And I think there is more, but how can we maybe connect these young population, these young girls also to spread the message to the 30, 40, 60 years old too, right?
So that will be the question that I ask our next guest here in the International Women in Dairy series, Fernanda. And what a fun time it has been catching up with you today and getting to know you better, but also with such great admiration for what you have pushed yourself and challenged yourself to do. And I hope that what others take away from what they hear from you today, Fernanda, is just that with that drive and that passion and that fire that you have to just take that and use it as your own fuel to keep believing in yourself, as you talked about, and to do it in such a way that, you know, you're able to keep growing, keep learning. And also that's been what's led you to find your happiness and find your joy along the way too. And anything else you'd like to add today?
Well, and I think for the young generation also, like, have a dreams. I think without dreams, you cannot go anywhere. So that's why I think not just live the dream, but have dream and work for to reach them. I think this is one thing that I always push myself and be fun in the process. That is my message.
I love that. You summed it up so beautifully. And with that, thank you so much for jumping on with me today. You just heard from Fernanda Lopes, Global Ruminant Strategy Manager with Adisseo. I'm Peggy Coffeen, and until next time, keep on growing, keep on learning, and keep up leveling your dairy.